right, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Ossining regular meeting and work session for Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance when we have our flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to the roll call, please.
Councilmember Feldman,
Present.
Councilmember Shaw,
Present.
Councilmember Meyer,
Present.
Councilmember Wiltshire,
Present.
Supervisor Levenberg.
I am here. Okay, so first up, we are going to be starting tonight with our public hearing on our local law temporary outdoor permit. I'm just going to I'm trying to juggle these two things. We discussed this proposed local law to establish a temporary outdoor dining permit in the town of Ossining at our last work session. A draft of the local law was circulated and posted online. The purpose of this local law is to establish a medium-term mechanism by which eating and drinking establishments in the unincorporated town can provide outdoor dining for their patrons. This, of course, came to light as an issue due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but there is certainly a function for this local law to be used during other medium-term emergencies, such as a fire or other serious property damage at one of our local eateries. We hope this local law will help support our local eating establishments during this incredibly difficult time, and also possibly help ease any significant burdens in the future. I'm going to turn it over to Council Tom Madonna to walk everyone through the proposed legislation briefly before we open it up to public comment. Council Tom Madonna.
So the board did discuss this, a first draft of the local law at your, I believe it was July 27th work session. And based upon that, we did make a couple of changes, but basically the gist of it as it's currently drafted is it gives the building inspector the authority to issue a permit for up to a period of 45 days if the applicant can demonstrate that they are illegally eating and drinking establishment and due to a hardship or other outstanding circumstances are not able to utilize the entire interior of their establishment. So basically what this does is it allows temporarily some of that dining to be moved outdoors, so that, but not so that the applicant can exceed what would have been 100% of the indoor capacity. So it's really that the intent is to try to maintain the status quo as opposed to expanding the currently existing use. And obviously, yes, it did come up in the first instance in the context of COVID-19 with the restrictions that have been put on interior dining. First, it wasn't allowed at all, and now it is allowed, but at a reduced capacity. But as the supervisor mentioned, it does provide a mechanism where if there's another reason that in the future, when this is no longer an issue, hopefully soon, but that if there are other reasons why it cannot be utilized, then this is a mechanism that's available. So some of the issues that the board discussed at the work session were the length of the permit, and it does give the building inspector the discretion for how long to issue the permit based upon the circumstances, but the maximum time period is 45 days. And the way it's contemplated is that if the applicant obtains a certain number of those permits in the law as it's drafted currently is 5 within a 12-month period, then the mindset is that this really isn't intended to be a temporary thing anymore. They want it to be permanent, and in which case they have to go back to the planning board and get amended site plan approval. So there's certain criteria in the legislation that the applicant would have to satisfy and demonstrate to the satisfaction of the building inspector. They have to provide a C of O, certificate of occupancy, or other documentation showing that they're legally operating. They have to be able to explain why, due to a risk to public health, safety, and welfare, the establishment cannot utilize any or all of its indoor space. They have to show a plan that depicts where the dining is going to be. And if the dining is going to be in a parking lot or other type of area, they need to demonstrate safe access and means of ingress and egress. And any other, it also leaves it up to the building inspector to request any other information to the extent he deems it necessary in that particular circumstance. And it does not waive any other legal requirements that would be on the applicant other than the fact that they can do this temporarily without having to get amended site plan approval. But you would have to apply to all other laws and regulations and executive orders that have been issued by the governor, as well as any, the state liquor authority and anything having to do with the serving of alcohol. And so the changes that were made was that, since the board last discussed this, was to allow for the permit to be up to 45 days where it was previously 30. But it gives the building inspector the discretion to grant it for a shorter period of time. We also added a specific reference to the fact that open air tents are allowed, but they can't have siding and they can't be enclosed. It's not intended to be an enclosure, just an outdoor seating, especially in light of the current environment where outdoors is encouraged. So if anyone has any other specific questions or anything that you want me to address, but I think that's pretty much, that's
Right. And that's just for, at this moment, for the board. If the board has any other specific questions before we open up the public hearing.
We're also, this is on for work session discussion after
Right.
public hearing. So what we're doing is we're opening a public hearing tonight. I think the intent is to leave it open for at least a meeting to allow for written comments and to give the public another opportunity at a later date to possibly attend the meeting and speak on this if they're so inclined. So tonight is just preliminary in terms of the public hearing process. And we are going to have a work session where we can discuss any comments that the public may raise at the public hearing, as well as any thoughts that the board has on the changes that are made or any additional changes the board may want to make.
Okay, so with that, is there anybody here to address the board on at this public hearing on the local law draft for a temporary outdoor permit for eating establishments? If so, if you could raise your fake hand, that means if you open up participants and then either there's 3 dots or you would see the whole participant list and it says raise hand. If you could raise your hand, we will then recognize you and you will have an opportunity to address the board on this local law.
And if you're calling in, you would press *9.
And if you're calling in, you will press *9. Thank you for that. So I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes in case anybody has a hard time. If for any reason you're having a hard time, oh, I think we see one person. Okay, so Mindy Lamar has her hand raised, and that's the only hand I see so far. Mindy, if you could please, if we can unmute her.
Yeah, I'm trying to. For some reason, it's not working. Okay, you're unmuted now.
Okay.
Am I good?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Mindy Lamar, 12 Haymont Terrace, Briarcliff Manor. While the town's intent to consider permitting temporary outdoor dining for restaurants in general business or commercial zones seems reasonable, non-conforming properties such as the Briarcliff Manor operating at 25 Studio Hill Road in a residential area of single-family homes must be excluded. The establishment's owners and managers have long made expansion desires known by petitioning for allowances to circumvent their non-conforming classification. Even now, prior to enacting the statute we're discussing tonight, in clear defiance of non-conforming expansion limitations, they've erected multiple outdoor tents for the purpose of providing a new service, full outdoor dining. For many years, the various owners have walked a tightrope attempting to conduct a large commercial operation in a quiet residential neighborhood. Thankfully, the town has always remained sensitive to its responsibility to protect the integrity of the community. The Briarcliff Manor, with a capacity of 260 patrons, is a facility operating with a cabaret license. Grandfathered as an intimate, local, fully enclosed restaurant, It presently advertises extensively as a large catering venue with a Hudson River vista. It attracts patrons from far and wide. That said, it is, according to New York State, a non-essential business and as such prohibited from mass gatherings. No more than 50 people may gather on the premises, either inside or outside. This restriction, which reflects CDC guidelines, demands cancellation or postponement of in-person events consisting of 50 people or more. On Thursday, July 30th, Mr. DiNapoli, the owner-operator of Briarcliff Manor, informed me in no uncertain terms of his intention to hold all future weddings entirely outside, even though bringing hundreds of people into a residential neighborhood, literally into our backyards at this time of pandemic, is a violation of New York State's mandate against mass gatherings, not to mention an overt expansion of its footprint. It is such an obvious health hazard, one wonders why this board would even consider extending the proposed law to any non-conforming establishments operating in residential neighborhoods. Furthermore, according to the State Liquor Authority, not only are mass gatherings forbidden at this time, so too is dancing. Are we to believe that the manor will adhere to this edict? Are we to believe this establishment will host wedding celebrations sans dancing? The Briarcliff Manor, unlike other such establishments operating in business or commercial zones, is non-conforming in an R15 single-family residential zone, which leads a reasonable person to suspect use of the COVID phenomenon as a pretext to permit expansion, something they and their predecessors, Masson Lafitte, Tara on Hudson, Studio Hill Mansion, Unique Affairs, Haymont House, have been looking to do for years. And for years, they've been ruled against by the Zoning Board of Appeals. If I may remind you, according to the Town General Code, Chapter 200-36, non-complying use shall not be enlarged, altered, extended, reconstructed, or restored, or placed on a different portion of the lot or parcel of land occupied by such uses, nor shall any external evidence of such use be increased by any means whatsoever. Allowing lawn tents or canopies to stay in place for 45 days on non-conforming properties with renewals available 4 or 5 times a year is, for all intents and purposes, giving permission to enlarge and extend use. It defies town code, it defies precedent, it defies court rulings, and worse, it defies the spirit of non-conforming statutes, not to mention there's no practical way for the town to enforce adherence to our laws and to COVID protocols, as entrance for law enforcement personnel is limited. At this time, to allow the Briarcliff Manor or any similar non-conforming establishment for that matter, outdoor dining, invites defiance of federal mass gathering guidelines. It disregards state mandates enacted to stop the spread of this deadly virus. Furthermore, to permit this expansion at any time is to ignore the town's zoning provisions, the town's regulatory procedures, past rulings of the town's zoning board of appeals, and the spirit of the statutes concerning non-conforming properties. Let me remind the board of something which I think the town attorney will support. The allowance of non-conforming uses has been characterized by the courts as a grudging tolerance of them. The right of municipalities to adopt reasonable measures to eliminate them has been recognized. The ultimate goal of the zoning code is to achieve uniformity of property uses within each zoning district, which can only be accomplished by the elimination of uses that do not conform.
I'm sorry.
I have 2 more short paragraphs. I'd appreciate it. You know, we're not overwhelmed here with people. Allowing expansion for a non-conforming property, doing business in the midst of a peaceful, quiet, bucolic residential neighborhood of single-family homes will forever change that business's footprint and alter the essential character of our neighborhood. It's not unreasonable to project that besieged by a constant influx of transients attending parties in our very backyards, property values will be threatened, forcing citizens to seek tax relief for those devalued properties. It's not unreasonable to assume some of our neighbors will take flight. That's not what's supposed to happen. Would any of you want partying in your backyard? Make no mistake, by allowing this, you will be putting not only our civic health in jeopardy, but our physical well-being as well. The premise is located at 25 Studio Hill Road, now operating as the Briarcliff Manor, and any other similar non-conforming establishments must be excluded from this proposed local law and be forced to comply with past decisions regarding their operations. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else here to address the board about this local law? I would just ask that you limit your comments to 4 minutes, and if you have anything additionally to the 4 minutes, that you submit that in writing to the town board, and you can email vcaffarelli, C-A-F-A-R-E-L-L-I, at townofaustining.com with your comments. Is there anybody else here to address the board on the proposed local law? If you, for any reason, are having problems raising your hand and you would like to unmute and just indicate that you would like to speak, I'm going to hold it open for another few seconds to see if there's anybody else who wanted to speak. Okay. I just do want to add that we have had an executive order in place that has allowed eating establishments to have expansion of eating outside to their outdoor spaces, and this has to go through the building inspector. So that has been allowed, and I believe that the Briarcliff Manor has applied for that permit out for the outdoor use at this point. So with that, if there's no further comments, I would like to ask for a motion to leave this public hearing open for at least one more meeting. So adjourn it to August 25th meeting, unless there's anybody else here to address the board for this public hearing. Can I have a motion to do that? I feel like, you know, again, with the power outages and everything that's been going on right now, and with our Zoom meetings, I think we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to weigh in on this. We, again, encourage anybody who might want to do so to please email vcaffarelli at townofaustining.com with your comments. And we look forward to talking about this a little bit more in work session if anybody wants to do so. It is on our agenda for a little bit later. And then we'll leave the public hearing open for at least one more meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Again, this is to adjourn the public hearing on a local law to August 25th. All right. So with that, we are going to, are we going into our work session, or we're going to do our announcements, or just, do you want to just go right into the work session now, Victoria?
We have Valerie on, so maybe we can just stick to how we had it planned and.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. We will do that. Okay. So next up on our agenda is
I'm sorry. Do we need to move to go into adjourn to work session? Yeah.
You do?
need, yeah, to go out of
hearing. Okay. 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 So may I have a motion to adjourn to work session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Be opposed. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So first up, are we going? So we're starting with court attendant, or you want to start with Valerie?
I think we could start with Valerie if she's there. She's muted, so I'm not sure. Please.
Valerie, are you with us yet, or did you just?
I am. Okay. I am with you. I am.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I guess following our public hearing, we wanted to give the board an opportunity to discuss if there are any changes that anybody would like to see at this point to the proposed local law. We did change, as Council Tomadana mentioned, we changed the amount of time that we had, and one of the reasons that we did that was to make sure that our businesses would have an opportunity, that they wouldn't have to come back immediately every time. If this, this unfortunate pandemic does not look like it's going to be over in a short time. We're seeing how that impacts us on a daily basis, even just with having to extend executive orders and for the governor having to extend, many of the workarounds that have been put in place, basically to protect people. One of the reasons that we are looking to allow businesses to expand outdoors is because we have some degree of understanding that spreading people out and social distance and having an ability and outdoor air is better than indoor air is a way that we can prevent spread. So having the ability to expand businesses to an outdoor space allows our businesses to be viable. And that doesn't actually mean that they get to extend everything to the outdoors. It doesn't mean that they get to have music outdoors. It doesn't mean that they get to necessarily have alcohol outdoors. To do that, they have to actually apply, I believe, to the state liquor authority in certain cases. It doesn't mean that they get to have dancing outside. What it means is that they can have eating and drinking outside in expanded spaces in a tent that doesn't have flaps on it. So we're not basically we're making a bigger footprint, but it's in a different way. It doesn't mean that they can suddenly have lots and lots of noise, and it means that they still have to limit the number of people. As far as some of the comments from Ms. Lamar, I don't want to comment on because I think we maybe need to gather a little bit more information about what the use would look like for an event. And I don't know exactly if, how the 50 people applies to things like events, or if you're allowed to have, whatever, a Mother's Day breakfast, and you can have people who are able to be spread out more outside or whatever. So I think that there's some information we still need to look into, but if the board has any comments that they would like to see addressed or discuss further or get more information on, let us know. So just opening it up to the board for comment on the proposed local law. And hearing none, I will go to our council, Tom O'Donnell.
I did hear from the building inspector on this. He did have an opportunity to review the local law, and he did have one minor comment because he is going to be the one, as we discussed, as it's currently contemplated, will be administering this, reviewing everything, and issuing the permits. And he had just one minor suggestion, and it's on page 2 of the draft, section toward the bottom, 136.4, building inspector authority, subsection B. It says, upon the building inspector's determination that all applicable conditions and requirements of this article have been satisfied, the building inspector shall issue the temporary outdoor dining permit without further review required by any town official, department, and or board. He asked if the board would want to consider making that, instead of shall, may, because I think he was a little bit concerned about extenuating circumstances and not really being able to anticipate all of those at this point in time. And so to give him a little bit more discretion on looking at this on a case-by-case basis in order to be able to determine whether the permit is appropriate, other than if an applicant just satisfies those 3 or 4 criteria, if he really has no choice but to issue it, even if in his good judgment as the building inspector, he thinks it may not be appropriate.
Okay. I think that sounds very reasonable.
Agreed.
Yes, no? Everybody agree that that sounds reasonable?
Yep, reasonable.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and then I don't know, maybe you could just look at a little bit more into the issue or question of a venue, of an event venue versus, versus food and drink drink establishment or whatever, how that would get handled and if it's different. Again,
Yeah,
I think
I know there are different regulations based upon different types of venues. In some places, 50 or it's 50% capacity. But I can certainly, there's a lot of guidance out there at this point. So
okay.
I can certainly look into that and provide the board with some more information on that.
Right. And so, I mean, just theoretically, presumably he is limited versus a regular restaurant that's supposed to be at 50% capacity, I believe, indoors. So allowing them to expand outdoors then gives them additional capacity to try to make up or recoup that, indoor limitation. Theoretically, I'm just saying, I don't know if this is true or not. If he's limited to only 50 per event, then again, that would potentially change the situation. So,
and they would still absolutely, and I mentioned this earlier, any eating and drinking establishment, event venue, anything that would be getting or seeking a permit under this law would be required to comply with all of those other regulations.
correct.
It's certainly not a waiver of that.
Absolutely.
Intention of the board to supersede this. I think the board's very cognizant of the health issues we're facing and is trying to do this in the safest way as possible.
100%. I mean, I think that that's exactly why we are looking to do this, because we're trying to keep our businesses from closing, and looking for opportunities that where we can help them basically, carefully and thoughtfully expand their footprint without putting anybody at risk. So I do think it's a time that we have to think outside the box a little bit, and think about how it impacts the tax base in general. And all of our businesses are, looking for some sort of solution. This is one way we can help one type of business. It's not necessarily the only thing that we can do, but I think that it's, it's the first obvious thing that we can do. So I just want to know, Valerie, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I don't at this time.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the board who has any other comments? Okay, so with that, I think that we're going to move on to our next work session. Again, the public hearing, as mentioned earlier, like a minute ago or two, has been adjourned to our August 25th meeting. Members of the public, I sent them all to you, Victoria, but instead we can submit their comments in writing to the town board at tc@townofaustining.com, and then we will all get to see them. In the interim, of course, Victoria will also forward them to us if you happen to take that down. Otherwise, you can do just TC for Town Council at townofaustining.com. So with that, I would now like to go into our second work session item. Again, a little bit out of order. We're going to start with our discussion regarding another proposed local law, amending the section of our code regarding residency requirements for the position of court attendants. As a municipality, we are required to closely follow the rules and regulations of Westchester County Civil Service. Within these regulations, there are strict requirements for the position of court attendant, which has made it particularly difficult to recruit and hire for this very necessary position in our courts. Now, as our courts are starting to open, we are having more and more need for staffing, and we want to make sure that we can actually fill. We have had 2 court attendants leave us for a variety of reasons, and we want to make sure that we can recruit for this position effectively. So it's been very difficult. I'm going to turn it over to Victoria Caparelli to add some more details, and then hopefully we will add a resolution on the agenda to set a public hearing for a meeting in early September. Victoria.
Thank you. So as the supervisor mentioned, as a municipality, we have to follow the restrictions or the requirements of the Westchester County Department of Civil Service. They review all of our appointments, hires, everything like that. And if they say, you know what, you're hiring somebody who may not fit the qualifications we feel you need to have for this job, you can't hire them. So with the case of court attendant, the minimum qualifications for this particular job are pretty high, and understandably so. It's kind of a difficult job to monitor court proceedings, and may have to intervene in certain circumstances. It's important to have the right person for the job, and so. Westchester County Civil Service has included as some of the minimum qualifications things like work experience in law enforcement or corrections, but also at the same time we need to hire somebody who can work part-time during the day. So that limits us pretty much to anybody who has served as retired police officer, retired corrections officer, that sort of person. Additionally, they state in their job description for court attendant that it is subject to public officers law, which means that we can only at this time hire residents of the town of Ossining for this position. And that's great. I know the town board certainly likes to prefer to support some of our local residents when we do have job opportunities to hire, but at the same time, with a limited pool of applicants already, with the job qualifications we need to hire under, that adds an additional roadblock to us hiring for this position. And as the supervisor mentioned, it's very, very important. It's very necessary. We always need court attendance at our court proceedings, and even more now with some of the health screenings and things like that to ensure that our court proceedings remain safe and healthy. So our contact at Civil Service that I work very closely with all of our appointments suggested that one way that we could possibly open up the pool of applicants a little bit bigger and help us in recruiting and hiring for this position would be to consider adopting a local law to add the position of court attendant as one position that is exempted from the residency requirements of public officers law in our code. Currently, there is a section of our code that addresses this, and it addresses it with respect to the positions of court clerk and building inspector. So this is something we kind of already have on the books for other positions in the town. I think that this is really going to help us out hiring for this position. Right now, we do have 2 vacancies in terms of our roster of court attendants, which makes it very difficult for the court to schedule the resources that they need during court proceedings. So our council has reviewed our code and kind of pointed out the section that we could make this amendment. And so I just wanted to see what the board's feelings were on this. If you have any questions about why this is necessary, I think it's just going to make it a lot easier for us to get the right person in this job. And I think that's the most important thing for us. Obviously, if they're an Ossining resident, that's a boost, but we kind of need to open up the pool a little bit more to make sure we get the right people.
Thank you very much, Victoria. So with that, I will just open it up to the board. If anybody has any questions for Victoria at this point or for me. Otherwise, what the next step would be to have a resolution on the agenda for our next meeting to open up a public hearing on this local law to allow for the court attendance to be outside of not have the residency requirement. Are there any questions?
Well, an Ossining person would still have some kind of preference, but we would be able to go outside of that if we couldn't find what we needed within Ossining. That's the gist of it?
Certainly. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
For most of our appointments. If we have people who live in Ossining, that's an added bonus. But at least this opens things up, because we've had a couple of qualified candidates come to us and make applications, but we weren't able to hire them because they don't live here, and that's kind of unfortunate. So it just helps open things up a little bit. We have a limited pool of people that fit those requirements in Ossining, so this will hopefully open it. But yes, definitely.
Yeah,
And I know we've been looking for a little while. Did we get any qualified applicants from Ossining, or not so much?
No,
Right. So that's the main reasoning. Is
Absolutely.
obviously we preferred Ossining person, but
Right.
we can't not have a court attendant. So
Sometimes we get people who started out in Ossining and then moved elsewhere, so we know them, but they're not here anymore. So, and that also happens sometimes with our residency requirements, as people start out here and then they move away. So again, I think that it really behooves us to make sure that we have qualified candidates, and that as much as we would like to be able to hire from Ossining, this would not preclude us from hiring outside if we couldn't find anybody from inside. So is everybody okay with adding that resolution? I'm sorry, go ahead, Council.
I just wanted to raise one other item for the board to consider while we're discussing this in a work session. As Victoria mentioned, there is already a law in the code that contemplates this for the building inspector and the court clerks. And in that context, it provides that the individual in that position need not be a resident of the town of Ossining, provided such persons are residents of Westchester County or an adjoining county within the state of New York. So I think the board may want to think about and discuss, if you're going beyond Ossining, how far do you want to go? And if Victoria has any recommendations on that.
And we could also, potentially, we could add in for this particular position that we could also add in preference will be given, to Ossining candidates. And I think that would not be a bad idea to add that in explicitly. Right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the county thing, I'm certainly in favor of making sure we have somebody that it's not going to be an issue that they have to drive so far away to come work for us. I think that's certainly a benefit. We don't want to have somebody who says, oh, I can't come because I live 3 hours away or whatever it is. So I think certainly putting that a little bit of restriction on it is not a bad idea.
All right.
So do you want to do Westchester and adjoining municipalities the same way it currently is for the other two positions?
I think it makes sense to
Yes.
keep it consistent.
Okay. And so I think we had also, we had included on the agenda this evening a resolution to set that public hearing tonight. If the board is amenable and would like to consider that resolution tonight, that way we can make sure it gets noticed in the paper and, put out there in the world prior to that meeting in September.
All right. Okay.
I'm good with
Is
that.
everybody good with that? Fantastic.
Yes.
So if that is the case, I believe I am now asking for a motion to adjourn back to our regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, wonderful. Now then, I need to find my announcements. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, so last week, maybe some of you know that in addition to the pandemic, Tropical Storm Isaias tore through Ossining and Westchester County. Thankfully, we have some phenomenal crews at our service, including our incredible highway department, and specifically our highway superintendent, Pete Connolly, and our foreman, Kevin Moore, who fielded calls during the storm to assess damage and clear roads for emergency vehicles. So we are very grateful to them. Superintendent Connolly was literally all over town, responding to at least 13 unique home addresses and returning to sites like Hawks Avenue, Morningside Drive, Gordon Avenue, Old Albany Post Road, River Parkway, Glendale Road, Studio Hill, and many more multiple times to track the damage and oversee clearing and cutting where possible. I would also like to extend a huge thank you to our Parks Department who came in to assist, our dedicated police department, specifically Chief Sylvester, and Lieutenant Slater and Montague, who worked around the clock with us to make sure that our Con Ed municipal liaisons were well-versed in where the issues were and shared daily updates with residents, as well as the Ossining Fire Department and OVAC, who were responding to calls during the most dangerous hours of the storm. And also a special thank you to some of those some of our residents who just came out and lent a hand, and I know that there were quite a few, including, I believe Mr. Anthony Beldotti the Younger was out there helping clear Hawks Avenue. So shout out to him and his friends. Many of our residents are still recovering from the damage caused by the storm. Some people have been without electricity, phone, or internet service for a week. Of course, on top of that, people are still dealing with downed trees in their yards and the ongoing concerns of COVID. So I want to let everybody know that we were in close contact the entire time with the municipal liaisons and government relations folks at the utilities to escalate to the best of our ability. Obviously, this storm went well beyond Ossining, well beyond Westchester County. I think that what we learned from the daily calls with Con Ed and more recently with Altice was that, and that's the parent company for Optimum, for those of you who aren't familiar with that name, it seemed to me that what we heard was that Con Ed used a weather model that underpredicted the severity of the storm. And when you do that, what it means is that you don't have the boots on the ground crews that you need in place, hanging out in a parking lot so that they can just step right in and start working. And you have to wait longer to get those crews through mutual aid. Con Ed did decide not to send their crews out for mutual aid when they learned that the storm was going to get worse, but they didn't really understand the severity of the storm until it was really too late to get all the crews they needed. And it really wasn't until this weekend when all of that mutual aid showed up in Westchester, ready to continue to cut and clear. I mean, when we hear that, you know, many of our neighboring communities such as Cortland and Newcastle and North Castle were in much worse shape, still having many roads down today. They still had, you know, I think thousands of customers still out today. And Con Ed was still promising restoration times of tonight. I think that nobody who was without power for 5 days counts themselves as lucky. But when you look at some of our neighboring municipalities, we were lucky. We did have crews here, and to the extent that was possible, they dealt with our issues. We know that there, you know, were a lot of people were out in the condos. 3 of our condominiums were down for until yesterday, and that was because of a large outage that was on Hawks, which needed multiple poles and multiple crews to actually show up. So we're grateful that we got to restoration by today. I think when I last looked at the outage map, there was only about 1% left, and a lot of those are where something needs to be then attached to the house, and it might require a local electrician to come to the person's house to attach the wires or the lines back to the house. And Con Ed is still involved in that process, overseeing and you know, turning on or turning off the service until that can be done. But for the most part, our roads are all cleared, and we're very close to 100%. So again, thank you. I believe, I don't know, Pete Conley, our highway superintendent, was on. Are you still on, Pete? I can't quite see. I think that's you. Yes, that is you. We're very grateful for all the work that you and your departments oversaw and helped, and boots on the ground. I know that some of the situations were not as safe as we wish they could have been, and they were very difficult, and we appreciate all the hard work that you put in, and including over the weekend, to make sure that people could be up and running and safe in their homes as quickly as possible. I will also say that people have been very frustrated with Con Ed and did not believe that that all of the promises that they had heard after Superstorm Sandy came to fruition. I know that we've had a bunch of storms between Sandy and now, and this response seemed much better, which is why I believe personally, based on all the multiple surprised that and made them not ready. But I know that Governor Cuomo has directed the Department of Public Service to launch an investigation into the storm responses by Verizon and Con Ed. And I don't know if Altice is on that list yet, but probably will be if it isn't already. And that Westchester County Executive George Latimer has proposed a utility reserve corps to act like the National Guard and help repair service lines after natural disasters. And on the many calls that I was on daily with local managers, mayors, supervisors, as well as state assembly members and senators, county executives, and county legislators, with Con Ed, as well as Altice and Verizon. And when we were hearing all of these daily reviews of restoration status, that there was a lot of frustration. And there was definitely call for hearings to take place in the not too distant future. But our first priority was really making sure that we got everyone's power and services back as quickly as possible. And so just wanted to let people know that there are concentrated efforts to evaluate these companies, how they react to emergencies, and look for ways to greatly improve response times in the future. I do want to remind our residents that the Austin Community Center continues to operate as a cooling center from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if you happen to be among that 1% that's still without power and you need a place to cool off during the day, that is an option, and that's weekdays. This service is going to continue for our residents throughout the summer. If you lost power for more than 48 hours, also, you can apply for reimbursement from Con Ed for up to $540 worth of food. Businesses can also apply for reimbursement up to $10,700. And we have shared those applications for that through our e-blasts. We'll make sure that we put them up on our website. I believe Altice is also offering, if your service was down and it did not have to do with a power outage, that there's some reimbursement available for when you were down service for them. For everyone that's picking up trees, branches, and leaves from their yards who lives in unincorporated Ossining, the highway department will be picking up storm debris for the next few weeks. Please bring your branches to the curb, but don't allow them to fall into the road. Lay them with the stalk end pointing to the curb, leaves toward the house, on your lawn near the curb. Do not pack them in plastic bags. And speaking of making greener decisions, a reminder that storms like Isaias are expected to become more common and more intense. The town is actively working to decrease any negative impacts on our environment. We ask that people help reduce the amount of litter in our parks and shared spaces. And we know we've had extra use of those during the storm because A, we saw everybody out there, and B, we saw the garbage. So we do ask that you utilize a carry in, carry out policy. Whatever you take in, take back home with you and dispose of when you get back home. Please also be careful to properly dispose of plastic gloves and disposable masks. Our parks team has continued to do their best to maintain and sanitize our parks and keep our favorite spaces in tip-top shape. They had to take all those garbage cans we had just put out at Engle Park away because of the storm. We didn't want them, all the signage and all the garbage cans to blow off into the Hudson. So we took them back, but we will be putting them back out shortly. We just got some new ones in that are a little bit more sturdy. So you'll be seeing more garbage cans out at Engle, and that's good news. And if you can carry in and carry out your garbage, again, that makes it even better. Mask makers are still working hard to keep up with demand. If you want to help and recycle some of the items in your closet all at the same time, Nancy Edelman is leading the local arm of the Tri-State Mask Makers, which is converting old t-shirts, bedding, and other items into PPE. You can donate choir and graduation gowns from the back of your closet to this effort. Sewers are also needed for her latest initiative, a call to make 1,000 masks for school children and faculty. Material will be provided as well as standard patterns for an elementary school size as well as secondary adult size. Please email Nancy Edelman at nancy.edelman@gmail.com if you are willing and able to join this mask making effort. And obviously school is, reopening is on everybody's mind, and we did hear from the governor that schools will be allowed to reopen, and we just want you to know that we're also working to the best of our ability to help with the school district in any way that we can to make it easier for them to offer safe spaces for students during the day if they are not going to be able to be in school. So we're going to, we'll keep you posted on that. And we're also looking for a way to restart our senior program in a way that would be safe. And those are somewhat related, and we'll keep you posted on that as well. The Austin Food Pantry is still looking for volunteers to help pack bags for food distribution. This is a great opportunity for middle school, high school, or college-age students who are looking to hang out with friends in a safe way. The Food Pantry serves Austin and Briarcliff residents, and as you can imagine, they have seen a dramatic increase in demand since March. And as we've spoken about many times here, volunteers are urgently needed to unload the food trucks Fridays 9 to 11:30 a.m., packing food into bags Monday from 2 to 4 p.m. and delivering bags from the pantry to distribution points Tuesdays 2 to 4 p.m. Please email osfoodpan, OSSFOODPAN @gmail.com if you're interested in volunteering. Coming up next week on Thursday, August 20th, OVAC will be sponsoring a blood drive from 3 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Blood supplies are often low in the summer and are especially low since COVID has disrupted large-scale donation events. OVAC has a clean and safe place all set up for donations, so please schedule an appointment time by visiting nybloodcenter.org. Looking further ahead, the Westchester County Board of Elections is hiring. If you are over 18 and a registered voter, you can apply to be paid $350 to work on Election Day. Many people who traditionally work as poll workers are older and have chosen not to enroll this year. We do not want a shortage of workers, so keep voting lines short and Election Day hassle-free and get paid while you're doing it. You can visit the Westchester County Board of Elections website to apply. The governor's office updated the list of restricted states included in the travel advisory. A few states were added and a different few were removed. It's important that travelers review the information on the travel advisory section of the New York State website. Please do this before and after traveling to ensure you are taking the proper health precautions. Coronavirus cases in New York remain low compared to the rest of the country, and we want to avoid bringing the virus across state borders. I will let you know that we receive daily updates, which are somewhat delayed in reporting, but the last reported case of COVID in unincorporated town was on July 10th. So we've had 0 cases reported in the town for a few weeks now, which is great. And finally, I want to remind you to fill out your census. Come on, people, you guys know this now. Door knockers were originally going to have until the end of October to help people complete the survey, but that timeline has now been cut by a month. If someone knocks on your door to complete the census, please work with them, and they do have official badges to say that they're from the census. Ossining loses $2,500 for each uncounted resident, and right now, about 35% of Ossining remains uncounted. It takes only 10 minutes to complete the census, and you can fill it out in one of 60 languages. You can also complete the census in your preferred language over the phone. Please reach out to your friends, family, and neighbors to ask them to complete the census. What is it? mycensus.gov? Yeah, .gov or .us.gov. Census results affect representation at the federal level. It impacts how trillions of dollars are distributed over the next 10 years. And if we get to 100%, you don't have to hear me saying this anymore, which I think is the best part of getting to 100%. Do any of my board colleagues have any other announcements? Okay, having covered it all, we hope. I don't need a motion to adjourn into a work session. I think that we are going into our agenda and our resolutions. Let me just see where we're at because
We need a motion to adjourn back to the regular meeting, though.
Oh, no, I think we did that. We did that already. We did that.
We're done, yeah.
Right? We did that. Okay. I think we are up to our
Liaison
liaison reports. Okay, liaison reports. Thank you, Martha. Are there any? Now I have to go back and forth. Wait, hold on a second. I'm gonna make it so I can see everybody and I can see the agenda at the same time, which is a little bit challenging because I didn't do it earlier. I'm sorry. Okay, now then. Okay, so not seeing anybody who wants to give any liaison reports. I'm just gonna ask our Deputy Supervisor, Jackie Shaw, if I believe that the Recreation Advisory Board, that's probably tonight. The village does have their meeting tonight, and I think the Rec Advisory Board was coming to make a presentation to
On Wednesday.
So tomorrow. That's this one. So they have 2 meetings in a row. Okay. So they're
The meeting that we had was canceled because a lot of people didn't have power. So the Rec Advisory Board is meeting next Monday, but they're presenting to the village tomorrow.
I see. Okay. So I think we did ask if we could get an updated, there was some kind of a draft that was going around if at some point, maybe it's after next week's meeting, if we could get a draft, then I think we'd like the Rec Advisory Board to also come present to the town board. We're going to be launching into budget season very, 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 very soon. And having that presentation in advance of budget season, I think would be extremely helpful. So hopefully we can do that.
Okay.
And then next up, we have public comment on agenda items. So anything that is on our agenda for this meeting, for this regular meeting, if anybody from the public would like to comment on anything on the agenda. please raise your virtual hand. And again, if you're on a telephone, you can push *9. Otherwise, you can click on participants, and then that will open up a little screen and give you an opportunity to raise your hand. And if for any reason, any of those things are greatly troubling, you can also unmute yourself for a minute and just yell.
Okay, yes. Ms. Lamar, I'm trying to unmute you again. Okay.
How about now?
And if you could please limit your comments to 4 minutes.
Promise. I wanted actually to thank you for affording me the extra time tonight. And just for clarification, did I hear correctly that the public hearing is not being closed tonight? It will still be open at your next meeting.
You heard correctly, yes.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else from the public who would like to comment on any of the agenda items? Just gonna give a couple more seconds because sometimes it's not easy to do, and I don't want to start going through our resolutions and then have anybody feel that they have not been able to be heard. Okay. And hearing and seeing nobody else. There's like a little shuffling around over here in this participant, so I just want to make sure if there's anybody who just came on who wanted to comment on any of the on the agenda items, public comment on agenda items only. There will be a chance at the end of the meeting for visitor recognition on anything, but right now we're just talking about agenda items. Is there anybody who might have just joined us and seeing and hearing nobody? We can now go into our board resolutions. I will turn it over to our Deputy Town and Village Clerk, Martha Quiddy-Safa.
Okay, approval of minutes, regular meeting, July 28th, 2020. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austin hereby approves the July 28th, 2020 minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Was there anybody that was absent? Okay. Nobody was, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay.
Approval call for public hearing, local law to amend Chapter 47 of the Town Code residency requirements with respect to court attendance. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austin hereby calls for a public hearing in the matter of local law number 2 of 2020 to be held at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, and be it further resolved that pursuant to the Governor's Executive Orders 202.1 and 202.15 and subsequently extended, this public hearing will be held via video conferencing only, with the information to participate in the public hearing to be duly noticed and circulated in accordance with the requirements of noticing public hearings.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
As mentioned earlier, this is the resolution to set the public hearing on the local law regarding residency requirements for court attendance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Appointment Intermediate Clerk, Town Justice Court. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Austin appoints Kenneth Lee, White Plains, to the part-time position of Intermediate Clerk in the Town Justice Court at an hourly rate of $25 effective August 5th, 2020.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
So we're appointing Kenneth Lee as a screener for our Justice Court. We recently reopened the court for walk-up window office hours daily, and Kenny's appointment was critical to meeting that goal. So if you have to come in to pay a parking ticket, hopefully Kenny's friendly face greeting you at the door will make the visit a little more pleasant. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay.
Adoption of retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records, LSG-1. Resolved by the Town Board of the Town of Austin that retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records, LGS-1, issued pursuant to Article 57-A of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law and containing legal minimum retention periods for local government records, is hereby adopted for use by all officers in legally disposing of valueless records listed therein. further resolved that in accordance with Article 57-A, only those records will be disposed of that are described in retention and disposition schedule for New York Local Government Records, LGS-1, after they have met the minimum retention periods described therein, and B, only those records will be disposed of that do not have sufficient administrative, fiscal, legal, or historical value to merit retention beyond established legal minimum periods.
Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Valueless records. Is there any such thing? Our town clerk remains in close communication with our liaison at the New York State Archives to ensure the town follows proper retention schedules. We are just one among hundreds, if not thousands, of municipalities, school districts, fire districts, etc., that rely on New York State Archives for this guidance. This year, the Archives has released a new retention schedule that consolidates the information for these various types of agencies. This will hopefully streamline the processes without necessarily changing much about the specific retention schedules for the records the town produces. Thank you to our clerk, Suzanne Donnelly, and her deputy, Martha Kudisaka, for staying on top of this somewhat tedious but very, very important task. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Extension of approval of provisional 2020 cabaret license, Maya Riviera Bar and Restaurant, 518 North State Road, Briarcliff Manor. Whereas by resolution duly adopted March 10, 2020, the town board, under its authority pursuant to Chapter 68 of the Town Code, Section 6820B, granted Maya Riviera Bar and Restaurant, the applicant, a 3-month provisional cabaret license for extended hours during which the applicant can play amplified music on Sundays through Thursdays from 11 p.m. through 1 a.m. And whereas due to COVID-19 pandemic and the related closures to restaurant establishments, by resolution duly adopted May 26, 2020, the town board extended the provisional cabaret license for an additional 3-month period until August 25, 2020, and for a public hearing to be held on the provisional cabaret license as its August 11, 2020 meeting. And whereas due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic and the continuing restrictions on the operation of restaurants, the town board finds it appropriate to again extend the provisional cabaret license for an additional 2 months. And now therefore be it resolved, the town board of the town of Austin hereby extends until October 27, 2020, the provisional license subject to all of the terms and conditions set forth in the March 10, 2020 resolution. And be it further resolved, the town board will hold a public hearing at its October 13, 2020 meeting to assess whether to approve this license in its current form for the entirety of 2020 or make changes to the hours the applicant is authorized to play amplified music on Sundays through Thursday if the town board deems it appropriate based upon the information received at the public hearing. And be it further resolved, the town board reserves the right to amend the above date as appropriate under the circumstances based upon the conditions and restrictions under which the applicant can operate in the interim due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So as mentioned in the resolution back on March 10th, somewhat pre-COVID, just barely, I think, the town board provisionally approved the cabaret license for Maya Riviera as they requested extended hours of operation during weeknights. We had hoped that the provisional approval would allow the board to see the real impacts of this extension before officially approving the license. However, just a few days after the board made this decision, we all pretty much went into lockdown and Maya Riviera was unable to operate their on-site dining and events. This approval was extended again in May and until now in August. We are still adjusting to our new normal, so it seems appropriate to extend this provisional approval once again through October so we can fully gauge any potential impact on the neighbors. Right now, I don't think that we really can. So with that, everybody, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Acceptance of bid restoration of Superintendent's Cottage, Dale Cemetery. Whereas the town of Austin invited sealed bids pursuant to Section 103 of the General Municipal Law of the State of New York for the restoration of Superintendent's Cottage at Dale Cemetery. And whereas a public notice was advertised in the Journal News on October 24, 2019, and subsequently noticed on December 19, 2019, extending the bid opening date. And whereas the town only received one sealed bid, which bid was opened at 10 a.m. Monday, January 13, 2020, 2020. And whereas the one bid and thereby the lowest bid was the Clamio Construction and Restoration Incorporated, 293 Illington Road, Austin, New York, 10562, at a base bid price of $199,468, with varying prices for 10 alternates for an expanded scope of the town's discretion. And whereas after further discussions between Clamio Constructions as the low bidder and the town for the consideration of 10 alternates included in the bid form, a price of $325,242 was agreed upon, adding alternates number 4, number 6, number 7, and number 8, and number 9 to the project scope in addition to the base bid and scope. And now therefore be it resolved that the restoration of Superintendent's Cottage, Dale Cemetery, is hereby awarded to Clemco Construction and Restoration Incorporated, 293 Ellington Road, Austin, New York, 10562, with a total bid price of $325,242. And be it further resolved, the town supervisors hereby authorized to enter into an agreement with Clemco Construction with the terms as outlined in this resolution, subject to approval by council to the town as to form.
I just want to note that there's actually a little bit of an error in this. The public notices were advertised in the Gazette, not the Journal News. So that's something that I missed this morning.
Okay.
So I wouldn't mind making that change.
Okay, so do I have a motion as amended? Friendly amendment.
So moved.
Second.
So we have been talking about this project for a very long time. It's exciting to finally accept the bid for the Dale Cemetery Superintendent's Cottage project. Clemco Construction is a local company, which is another added benefit. And they're the ones who bid on it and succeeded in being the lowest bid, being the only bid, and will be completed the project as we were quite certain that with the base bid and the alternate selected, we are going to get a good bang for our buck. This is a restoration project, and we have done our best to make sure that we can do it for thoughtfully and in consideration of this historic building, but also reasonably. So we're grateful again for Tom Clements of Clemco and his expertise. The board has already authorized the budget adjustment for the capital project in accordance with this price. So we are now just wrapping up the final details to get this project off the ground. And I ask that we all vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Wonderful.
Contract Stephen Tilley, architect. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austining authorizes the supervisor to sign an amendment to the contract between the town and Stephen Tilley, architect, Irvington, New York, dated June 26, 2017, for architectural services relating to the Dale Cemetery Superintendent's Cottage Restoration Project for Part 2, construction documents, and Part 3, implementation, at a rate not to exceed $41,786.30.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So on the same topic, we are also approving a contract amendment with our architect on the Dale Cemetery project, Stephen Tilley, architect, now that we're moving forward with the construction. Again, these fees were incorporated into the budget adjustment approved a few weeks ago. So we're excited to get started. And I believe, if I didn't already mention it, that we had bonded for this project and also determined that we were going to use some of the cemetery fund balance to pay for these improvements. And finally, improve the building, improve the envelope of the building, and make sure that it does not go to ruin. Critically important. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Correspondence to be received and filed.
Do I have a motion?
We don't have any.
Oh, we don't have anything. I'm sorry.
Okay, monthly reports. Resolved that the town board of the town of Austin hereby accepts the following monthly reports for the month of July 2020. Town clerk, GE helicopter report, tax receiver, town highway department, town supervisor, Dale Cemetery, and town building department.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
This is the problem with me bouncing back and forth to screens and not being able to see everything all at once. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thanks. Okay, so next up, we have visitor recognition on anything at all. We ask that you limit your comments to 4 minutes. And I do see that there are a number of people from our public that were on. So if there's anybody who's here to address the board on any topic, if you could, again, raise your virtual hand. You can do that by clicking the participants at the bottom of the screen, and then you have an opportunity to click raise hand, and we'll see you and we'll unmute you. If you are on a telephone and want to do this, you can press *9 and we can see that you would like to speak and we can unmute you that way. So is there anybody here to address the town board on any topic? Okay. There's a few people out there whose names I don't exactly know, so if you're here for anything, now's your time. Again, if you have problems with the raised hand and you want to just try to unmute yourself and say, hello, I would like to say something, you can do that as well. And another couple seconds for people to get with the technology situation here, if you would so desire. Okay, in that case, I would ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel, advice of counsel, and contracts.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So thank you, everybody. Our next meeting will actually be held on Friday, August 14th at 9 a.m. for a special meeting to approve vouchers. Unfortunately, our town offices were not spared, and I should have mentioned this earlier. During Tropical Storm Isaias, we lost internet for, I think, 5 days. And then yesterday, we thought we were back up, but we were down for a good portion of the day when we weren't able to get our emails. So we were not able to process our invoices and post them and review them for approval at tonight's meeting. Therefore, we are convening a meeting on Friday morning for a very short time, simply to approve these payments so that we can ensure our vendors and contractors get paid in a timely fashion. As a reminder, we're still operating on our abbreviated schedule for summer town board meetings. In June, we dialed back our summer schedule a bit, and we canceled our work sessions for July and August and put them onto our regular meetings as we did this evening. So we will see you back via Zoom on August 25th for another combo regular meeting and work session. Have a wonderful night, everybody. See you. Please be safe out there, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.
Good.